Join me as we take on the challenge of letting AI do its job without constant micromanaging. You are not going to believe this. Micromanaging AI. It's easy to do, but you're not going to like the results that it delivers. Why? Because as we increasingly rely on artificial intelligence to automate tasks and make our lives easier, we are tempted to constantly monitor and control AI to make sure it doesn't hallucinate results. But what if I told you that this needs to stop? When we micromanage AI, we're essentially suffocating its ability to think creatively and make decisions independently. We're limiting its potential to exceed our expectations and surprise us with innovative solutions. Basically, we're not letting it cook, we are not letting it prepare something that's awesome. We're limiting its results. And the result is reduced efficiency because when we're constantly interfering, we're sacrificing the speed and agility of what AI is capable of producing. My business partner Mercer recently did a training to talk about this phenomenon, and I think you're going to find it insightful. So here's Mercer talking you through how to change your mindset when it comes to AI interactions.
So the way I think about this is a very much like not quite a mirror world, because it's not like AI is the exact opposite of our world. It's just very different. It has the same information, right? So both the information is the same, right? So we have information here and we have information here. And that's really the same information, right? Our world contains all the information. AI's world contains all the information. But here's the challenge. Where it starts happening from a challenging perspective is the human information. So it's the information that you have access to as a human is really what you have access to. You don't have access to the world's information. You have access to the information that you have access to, that you know what to do, the questions that you know how to ask, the results that you know are possible. And so automatically we're kind of limited. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a massive amount that we can do, but we're still limited because we're not all humans. We're not all of humanity. We're just our individual selves, right? So we have our human level information, but AI still has all the information. And this is why already it's a little more useful to get work done through whatever you need to get done through AI, because you're kind of filtering it through this thing that has access to everything. And when you're doing that, you open yourself up to improved results, because you're basically going to say, here's what I intend to do. Kind of what would you do? And it goes out to its information. And then it's like, okay, well, now that it's gone through 2 cycles of that, you're going to more likely get a better result. Now, how we communicate this, we talked about this a little bit on that webinar, is typically humans go, here's how, right, to do. And then we go into, oops, let me just pull it back up. So we go in, here's how to do the thing I want to happen, right? The thing I want to produce. And then really the way to think about this is the result, right? Here's how to do the result. That's all it is. Humans always do this. We have to do this. This is how we operate. Here's how to do the thing I want you to do. That is how we describe the result. But we always start with how first, and then we move into result. Okay, so here is the how, here is the result. Now with AI, it's different because AI has all the information. So it doesn't really matter if you just said, okay, I'm just going to copy these and I'm going to say, here's how to do the result. What I'm doing is I'm using, it did not work well. What I'm doing is I'm using AI and I'm going to say, well, here's my human information. So instead of AI's access to all the information, I'm going to say, don't worry about that. Here's my human information instead. Here's how to do the result. So then I take all the information AI has access to and I kind of say, yeah, put that aside, because I'm going to tell you based on my human information standpoint, here's how to do the result. This is what everyone's been talking about for years. This is how we prompt. This is how you're supposed to work with AI. You are a copywriter who should be writing this thing, right? We talked about this on that webinar. But this is why that automatically limits AI. It's like you're tying AI's hands behind its back, and it's still powerful because that thing can type with its feet, but it's still limited. Why would you want to limit it at all? And it's not that we ever intended to limit it. We accidentally limited it because we treat it like it's human, but it's not. It's AI. So it has to be treated differently. It has to be communicated with differently. It is a different mechanism, right? So we want it to have access to all the information. How do we do that? So what we're going to do is we basically reverse this process out and we say, okay, of all the information you have, I am looking for this result, right? So it's supposed to, here's the human information that I know of how to build a recipe to create the result that we want. It's you have all the information. This is the result that I want. And then we go, how do I do it? And this is where AI produces the result. Now, when I say AI produces the result, right? It's the result and basically give me the result, but it's going to give you the result in how steps, right? And this is where it says, oh, in other words, here's your copy. It gives you the result, but it's not like on your page yet. You're still gonna have to do something, copy and paste. You still have to edit as a human and look at it and say, does this make sense? You still have all that stuff. You have to give it feedback and then kind of loop it sometimes. And so we'll be talking about. But when you start with this mindset, it works substantially better because you're starting from its perspective of I have everything. I just need this. Tell me how to get that, right? Or produce that. That's the thing that it could. Sometimes it'll give you a recipe on how to produce it because that's what it needs to give you. Sometimes it'll just give you the thing, like an image, as an example. Now, why that works better? This is AI's brain, right? Obviously not the real brain, but you get the idea. It's a neural network that has been created. This is like the LLM. And what happens is the way that the LLM actually kind of learned its stuff and why this is so important is let's say that it wants to learn what a cat is. I know this is technically the GitHub symbol, but it's a cat. So if AI was designed to learn what a cat is, they have to teach it. This is how they initially built these things. What they did was they said, oh, is a brain a cat? No, a brain is not a cat. So therefore, not a cat. And it just keeps going over on and on and on. And it figures out everything that is not a cat. That's what AI does. That's how these LLMs work. This is what training means. It's going through and constantly going, is this a cat? 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 And it does that at 1,000,000,000 different levels. Hence these billions of parameters that you hear on these models where they say, oh, this is, I think it's got, 18 billion parameters. And the more parameters are the different connections, the more ability for it to connect the dots between the different sort of things that it knows, the different bits of information that it has retained in its database. So this is what they call a vectored database in technical terms. But visualizing it, kind of just mentally think about it like this. Again, it's not this exactly, but I think it's a useful construct. So whenever you hear about, vectorized databases, just imagine AI's brain. That's kind of what that is. It's a bunch of different data points that are all connected, all through different probabilities, and it's got to figure it out. So it's learned what not a cat is. And because it knows everything that is not a cat, that is how it knows what a cat is. And this is so different to think about learning. When you learned, you got taught what a cat was. You said, this is a cat. This is a cat, the animal. This is a different breed of cat. These are the different parts of a cat. This is what a cat is a part of. A cat is a mammal, right? Not a fish or all this other stuff. You got taught what things were. AI figured out everything that it wasn't or that it could not possibly be so that it could figure out what it might be. So it learned on its own. It created that learning on its own. That's why it has so much information and why it can be infinitely creative if we allow it to, because it's made connections you will never even imagine. You don't have to imagine. And this is the part I'm going to emphasize this over and over again with AI. You don't have to know how it works. Just like you don't have to know all the intricacies of how electricity works to take advantage of it. I have no idea how my computer works when it comes to the chips and transistors. I don't know. I don't care. I just turn it on and it works. AI is the same way. So I want you to have at least an understanding of it. You have to understand that electricity works and goes through wires, or else you really can't use electricity if you don't get that. You have to understand how a computer works and what it's capable of doing. And what I mean by how it works, as in I have to turn it on and then I log in and then I start using a browser window, right? So I have to learn those parts of a computer, but not the intricacies of all of how those things were built. Same thing with AI. So what happens when we give it our sort of ping pong prompting? That's what we're going to get into, from the basic prompt to a ping pong prompt. When you give it a basic prompt, that prompt, let's say we're saying, okay, hey, I need you to, make me a cake, and here's the recipe for a cake. Well, it goes, okay, I'm supposed to, a recipe for a cake, and that's what I'm being asked to do. So it's going to pick a starting point that is like based on where that prompt told it to go. Let's say it was your prompt, right? So let's say we're using our little human information. Here's how to do the result style prompt. So it picks a starting point, and then what will happen is as you iterate, it'll start to branch out. So it'll say like, oh, okay, and now I need to know about this, or now I'm talking about this. Now I'm talking about something, way over here that I needed. And it sort of just branches out, but it's always branching out from this main starting point. Okay, so where it sort of starts, it's got the most information. This is what it feels is the most relevant place to connect its database, to start its database. So it starts branching out and building this neural network of everything it's ever going to need to be able to handle everything that this prompt is potentially going to ask. This is how to think about it. So, and then when it gets stuff that it doesn't know, then it will expand out, right? And it'll reach out to other parts of its network and it starts making these wild connections. And this is where sometimes the hallucinations happen because it's starting with everything it thinks it's going to need. Then you sort of take it in a different direction. And then it starts going, oh, and then it starts bringing in weird things. And all of a sudden, hallucinations happen. It starts talking about things that don't exist. Now, hallucinations are not something that go away entirely with AI. This is why we have to edit. But I'll be honest, like hallucinations happen all the time with humans too. I have worked with lots of humans, and they all make assumptions. But they don't tell you the assumptions. Sometimes at least AI is telling you the assumption that it made. Humans sometimes don't. They just act as if they know and they move on and they make mistakes that way. So AI does, in my opinion, the same mistakes that humans do. You still just need to double check. Just like you would double check working with team members that you have, actual humans that are on your team, you would double check what the AI is doing. So don't get caught up in the hallucinations as a thing that you're trying to eliminate. That's not the point. The point is get better quality initial results so you have less hallucinations, right? Or more importantly, the hallucinations become more useful, meaning they become creative problem solving things, creative ways to get to the result in a way that your limited information did not have. And you go, "Ooh, I never would have thought about that. That's amazing." Right? Well, that's technically hallucination too. It's creating something new that you didn't expect. It's just that it's useful this time. If it creates something new that you didn't expect and it's not useful, that's the hallucination, right? That's the stuff that everybody tries to get rid of. Now, why the power prompting stuff works, and this is where we're ping-ponging back and forth when we talk about that, is because the starting point gets a lot more detailed. So your prompt is quite a bit more detailed in most cases when we do this. Because it's more detailed, it has more information, it knows what it's trying to do. It's got a better, clearly defined result. It has a better starting point. It knows, okay, I'm going to start here. And because it's able to start there, what it doesn't have to do as much. Oops, let me just get this out. It doesn't have to do as much of searching for things that it needs, right? So if it needed to get some questions that, and you're guiding it in different areas, it's probably a little more related and it's less likely to do stuff like this, right? Doesn't mean that it won't, because you still want it to be able to do this. You want it to be able to pull some incredibly creative, incredibly useful thing that has nothing. It came from an area that has nothing to do with what you're talking about. You want that because that's how you connect dots. That's how you go like, oh my gosh, I never thought about this thing that happened to be in some helicopter manual. It pulled out and associated to the thing I'm trying to do. That's useful. Like that's the beauty of this. It takes away that effort part of the human world, right? So this is kind of what we're trying to do is get our prompting better using AI to prompt itself so that it gets in a better starting position. So it's got more access to the right information it's going to need closer. And then hopefully, get our hallucinations to actually stop becoming hallucinations and instead become actually useful results, right? Again, same sort of generic concept of how that works. It's just that it's going to return the create with something useful versus something that is a made up thing that you can't do anything with.
When we micromanage AI, we're essentially doing the exact opposite of what we're trying to achieve. We're not freeing up our time for more strategic tasks, we're not improving accuracy, and we're not increasing productivity. We're simply creating more work for ourselves and our teams, and that's not sustainable. Incredible things happen when we trust AI and give it the autonomy that it deserves with our prompting. One of the most significant challenges in AI development is getting humans to let go. We're wired to want to control and correct, but the truth is AI can often do better on its own than we can. When we give AI the freedom to operate autonomously, we open ourselves up to new possibilities and innovations that we never thought were possible. So, what can you take away from today's video? Simply this: stop micromanaging AI right now. Give it the autonomy it deserves and watch as it surprises you with its capabilities. So what are your thoughts on micromanaging AI? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to learn more about AI and productivity, be sure to check out our Gemini AI workshop over at profitschool.com/Gemini. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.